and
Hmm.
they both travel with me everywhere because it wouldn't be any other way.
Well, that was the thing I wanted to talk about because um, there you have a picture on the internet of you with the two dogs in a bright orange Lamborghini, and it's really funny. I love it. The dogs are just jumping around like they're clearly having a good time. And
Yeah.
my daughter, I showed it to her, and she's like, "Wow, those dogs look they're being spoiled and having such a lovely time." She loved it.
Yeah, so I went to Miami like I don't know last year, and I stayed at this pet friendly hotel, and I came out with the dogs, and they
Hmm.
had the concierge had gotten to the vehicle, and he's like, "Where do you plan on putting the dogs?" And I'm like, "Well, where else would the dogs go? Like they're certainly not going in the trunk. They're of course going in the car." And he's like, "You cannot be serious." I'm like, "Of course I'm serious. Anybody can come in this car." Like I this is one thing that I'm really adamant about is sharing wealth and sharing value. And so like
Hmm.
I've let my nieces sit on top of the car. I've let 5 or 6 kids get in the car. Like I don't have an issue sharing that and letting people dream and showing them what's possible.
Yeah, I just thought that photo was super cool, and my daughter loved it. I was like, I bet you there are so many cranky men who hate seeing those dogs in that Lamborghini.
Okay, well, so there's a lot of cranky men that put their cars in the garage and leave it, and I use that as a daily driver. So, I mean, I'm the difference between probably everybody else and like what I consider as like just living life to the fullest and being passionate about what you do and showing people what's possible coming from absolutely nothing. So, it's not really about the car, it's about the experience that it gives you.
Awesome. Um, yeah, the fact that you just sort of be like, this is for fun, and my dogs are going to have fun with me. I thought that was super cool.
Yep, 100%.
What You are an expert in blue collar business, and blue collar seems to have become like so hot right now. It's blown up as kind of a category that marketers and biz op people are talking about, where they weren't talking about it before. It used to be like get away from offline, get into online, but now suddenly offline blue collar like traditional industries are hot again. Why has this happened?
Well, I think the big thing is people like Cody Sanchez or Grant Cardone or like really big names that have come into the industry and said like, hey, you should buy blue collar businesses because they're recession proof, they are cash cows, they are all of these amazing things. And while that is all true, it
Hmm.
depends on the industry that you're in, the location that you are buying, and then also just like what is the purpose of you wanting this business. So if it's based strictly on it being a cash cow and you want something that's going to entertain you in terms of um putting your skill set or your mindset to work, that's not really a good idea to buy. And so I try to like make sure that people realize that when we're talking about blue collar businesses, we're talking about hardworking, oftentimes men. We're talking about people who come home dirty, stinky, all of the things that a lot of women don't want in their homes. We're
I've been
talking,
that guy.
yeah. We're just talking about a different crew of people. And that
Hmm.
mentality is something that like came from many generations back. And so I think what's happening now is that people are so addicted to their phone, their technology, and other facets that they're realizing that being outside, that putting their body to work physically is mentally exhausting and they can sleep better at night. They get themselves to be more hydrated. They're just really in a space that allows them to be much more mentally healthy than sitting in front of a computer being addicted to social media and technology. So there's a lot of health benefits both physically but also mentally and just financially.
Hmm. I was invited last week to speak at a a mastermind for landscape gardeners,
Yep.
and it was the first time I've been out, like done some in real life business for a while. I was like, once I got there, I was like, I need to do this so much more often. Like you know, it's
Yep.
so much better.
It is a lot better. Like, and I find that people are, I guess, much more down to earth and humble. So we just talked about the Lamborghini. That's very much like an online, like, oh my God, go to TikTok. You're gonna see like the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris and this ecom business. Da 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 da. The blue collar guys are not like this. They're like, here's my badass truck, here's my boots, here's my like very scruffy face, here's my I don't give a fuck attitude. That's the blue collar industry. And so you have to decide, do you want this like stuck up sort of lifestyle or do you want this like humble, calm, like just a totally different atmosphere? And I think if you can figure out how to connect with people, maybe in both spectrums, Simultaneously, you'll figure out how to win the best for you. So both things bring their own sense of security, but one is obviously much more recession proof than the other.
Yes. So you mentioned about like celebrity kind of influencers who have talked about blue collar recently, like Grant Cardone and Cody Sanchez. Do you see them being like active operationally in blue collar industries? Do you think they're giving a realistic portrayal of what's involved to run businesses like that?
No, not at all. So I would say there's two parts to this. So the first part is that they're not only accurately representing what it takes to buy, build, and scale a sustainable and functional blue collar business, but then they're going one step further and telling people that are under 30 or even over 30, don't buy a primary residence because you will not be able to sustain that residence because you don't have enough money. So which is it? Because blue collar makes money. So if blue collar makes money, then you should be able to have enough money to sustain a residence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these people have tons of real estate, or they have a very large wealth portfolio. And in these portfolios, they have residual income, or they have income that sustains them to do the next thing, like buy a business that fails. Whereas like just the majority of people aren't in that situation. So I think it's just stopping and recognizing where you are in terms of what skills you have that can be integrated into a business that you can afford to buy, that you plan to keep over a long term, that provides enough financial stability for your lifestyle and your family and your future goals. And then we can look at what industry should that be in. Because, for example, if you don't have a GC license, you're not going to be a GC, right? You're going to have to go to school. So in Florida, a lot of the landscaping companies require a 3-year license. You can only get on year 3. And so if you don't have that license, you're not really going to be interested in buying a landscaping company. It's the same with electrical, HVAC, and other industries. So if you're not licensed in these capacities, you're not going to understand or know that you shouldn't get into that business because it's not going to be a business that's right for you based on your skill set. So the second thing is like the financial aspect, right? So you have basically, let's just say you have 10% down, right? So if you're coming in from anywhere in the United States, you can put 10% down on an SBA loan and you can buy the business.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're coming in from out of the United States, you're not necessarily going to qualify for an SBA loan, and you might want to figure out how you can owner finance the whole entire, or seller finance the whole entire transaction. And so these transactions are super rare. Again, we have to know what industry you want to be in, what location you want to be in. Are you willing to relocate? Who is going to be the management in place? What technology is going to be in place? And so many other components that need to go into this before deciding what you're actually going to buy. So I think the confusion comes when people say, I just want to buy a business. I have X amount of dollars down and I want to, like, I don't know. So for example, I've got a client that wants to replace $200,000 in W-2 income, but they have 4 children. So it's like very difficult to say, like, you have to have something sustainable, because if you quit this W-2 and you have these 4 kids and they don't eat, it's because you didn't produce and the business isn't producing. And most businesses that are producing require cash flow. And that cash flow has to be in the business to sustain the business. So if you're going to take out 200,000, you're going to have to buy a business over $1 million. And so that's where we get into these financial conversations of what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and why it does or doesn't make sense.
So in summary, it's anything but a passive investment. You better be willing to work hard and educate yourself.
Yeah, it's not passive. There are some, but very few passive income streams, and you will only get to passive if and only if you've already built a wealth portfolio large enough to substantiate the passiveness of it. So you can afford to put management in place. You can afford to build in technology. You can afford to walk away from it and have it negative in cash flow for a period of time while it grows to sustainability. So yeah, it's not passive, and I wish people would stop using that word like altogether. There's nothing in life that is passive.
Agreed. So let's talk about just the financial aspect a little bit first, because you mentioned different forms of financing. I think one of the things that made online so attractive for years was the idea that you can start a business with just a laptop. You don't need to have any money to get going. You know, a laptop and a credit card, you're good to go. And then on the opposite side, there's this perception that you can't get into an offline business or a blue collar business unless you have a lot of cash in the bank. Is that accurate? Or are there ways to actually get into blue collar business without being already wealthy?
You can definitely get into blue collar businesses without being wealthy, but then you're going to have to put in sweat equity. So you have to determine, are you willing to work for the equity in the anticipated outcome of financial gain? So you don't have to be wealthy to buy a blue collar business to get involved in the blue collar industries or to contribute to, the desire to attain the wealth established in a blue collar field. But it's certainly easier if you come in with some money, and it doesn't have to be a lot of money, right? Because if you want to keep your W-2 and buy a smaller business, you can do that. If you want to, buy some products and start multiplying your money so you can afford something more substantial, you can do that. So there's definitely ways, because I come from nothing, John. So I come from a little town of 237 people in Iowa. We didn't have money. Like, my parents never made money. And still to this day, like, I contribute to them financially in a capacity that they were, never able to do on their own. And I spend more money in a month than they've ever made in a year. So the thing here is that you have to understand, like, you can come from nothing and you can make it. But in order to sustain that, you have to figure out ways to multiply your wealth. So you're not going to start off with $1 million business if you can't afford $100,000 down. But you could start off with $100,000 business if you could afford $10,000 down. And a lot of people can do that. So you need to, so for example, my first house ever, I bought that for $47,500. And now I live in more than $1 million home on a golf course. So the thing is that you have to start where you are with what you have and the skill set and mindset, and then build from there. You can't just jump into the deep end and think that you're going to swim and be successful and financially free and have all this time on your hands because you are completely owner absentee. It's not going to happen.
Yes, I'm from my own experience of working in blue collar industries and doing project management and construction and seeing the amount of do-overs and constantly needing to replace crew and not being able to really ever take your eye off the job site and actually being the person, if you're the project manager or you're the kind of lead or have an ownership stake in the company, you're opening the door at 7 in the morning and you're locking the door at 7 in the evening. And nothing's happening unless you there as the owner.
It's true.
Yeah.
And like, it can come to a point where you have other people running the business. But again, like, you're going to have really nice cash flow numbers, and you're going to have really good margins. So you can't be running on 10 to 30% margins. That's just simply not enough. You're going to have to be somewhere between 43 and 70%. And in order to even get that, you're going to have to start at the really low margins and build your way up as your cash flow reserves build, because the projects that give you those large numbers are the same projects that are built out to be paid every 30, 60, and 90 days. So
yeah, there's nobody paying a big upfront deposit on a credit card in the construction industry.
So you really have to, like, be attentive.
Cool. So all of this comes back to your point a few minutes ago of you have to come into a blue collar business with a purpose, that you actually are thinking ahead of, why do I want to do this? What's my vision for it? And how long am I going to be involved with this? And what's the goal? What's it going to come to in the end?
Yeah. And the thing is, like, so you don't enter the blue collar field with this idea that I hate to use this because, like, this is just the truth of the matter. Cody Sanchez will be like, buy the business, flip the business, and then buy another business and then flip the business. That is not true. That is not true. You need to find the business, buy the business, hold the business, and continue to hold the business, and continue to hold the business. And then there will come a day. And at that point, you're going to realize you want to sell the business, and you will sell the business within 3 years of making that decision, but not before, because you have to have 3 years worth of tax returns, 3 years worth of P&Ls. You need to have an employee list. You need to have technology. You need to have a lot of things in place in order for it to be given a really nice multiple, and in order for it to be given a really good number on the bottom line. So it's not just so much as I want to buy a business, flip the business, and sell the business. It's I need to buy the business, hold, and hold. And then when the decision is made, you prepare for an exit. You don't just decide that you want an exit, or you're going to lose a ton of money on the bottom line and the multiple.
Cool. I'm going to come back to some of the more business topics in a minute, but I want to step away from that to actually your experience and where did you come from? Because you said I came from nothing, but you had to start somewhere. So where did you start out in business?
I started behind my computer in my parents' living room.
Great.
Yeah, so back when YouTube wasn't popular, I was able to, so YouTube was just coming around, right? So back 20 years ago, it wasn't a thing. So Les Brown, Tony Robbins, John Maxwell, they were all coming online. And the big thing then was they had CDs. You would buy 12 CDs or 20 CDs, and ultimately it would be a course. Obviously, these courses are online now, but back then that wasn't a thing. And then you'd put them in your DVD player and you would watch them, and you would supposedly get smarter because this personal growth would develop you. But the thing is, I legitimately didn't have money. So I pretty much sold everything except the clothes on my back. And at one point, my mom was getting scared for me because she's now you've sold everything. Now what are you going to do? So I made a deal with my brother, who liked to weld. And I said, I'll sell your stuff the fairs around our area. And I need a percentage of that so I can put it back into my business, a business that was barely a business. But the thing is, when you come from nothing, you have to get creative. And so that creativity is going to help you thrive, but you also have to hold on, because if you don't hold on.
Oh no, what happened to Melissa? Hey, Melissa, you're back.
Oh, I was here the whole time, but you're just basically going to be sowing seeds, but not reaping a harvest. So you need to sow seeds and reap the harvest. And that takes a lot of tenacity and a lot of time and a lot of discipline. And so, I mean, I would stay up late. I would wake up early. I would do whatever. I had uncomfortable conversations with people that probably would never give me the time of day, except I figured out a way to get in front of them. So creativity is a really great thing to have.
How did you get in front of people when you didn't have a reputation or credibility yet?
So I got lucky in two ways. So the first way is that I built my own podcast, and I did my own podcast, I think, for probably 5 to 7 years, somewhere in there. And I called it the Millionaire's Hot Seat, and it was 10 questions, 30 minutes. Welcome to the Millionaire's Hot Seat, where we put the pressure on millionaires to get their best kept secret strategies and insights to building a $1 million business. And I memorized this, and I would do this every single day. And I would say, I respect your time, 30 minutes, 10 questions, that's it. So ultimately, because I had a very strict, disciplined podcast, I was able to get Grant Cardone. I was able to get Deepak Chopra. I was able to get Tony Robbins. But then because I had these people, I was also able to tour with them. And then I wrote 10 books, and then I became a bestseller. And then the wheels started moving faster and faster because I had doors opening that I wouldn't otherwise have. And so that's the creative part. That's the okay, well, when people enter a podcast, they enter with a purpose. So what is the purpose? And in my mind, all I needed was opportunity. And if I could find that opportunity, then I would be able to move past the level of wealth that I had, which was nothing. So something is better than nothing. And so you just have to really hone in on what is your purpose in life, and what is your passion, and what is your message, and how are you going to get access to the people that you need to get access to, so that you can build brand reputation and make sure that you keep your promises to these people. So if you're saying 30 minutes, then it's 30 minutes. If you're saying 10 questions, then it's 10 questions. That's a really big deal for really wealthy, really busy people.
Yes. You mentioned some pretty big names there, and that's guys like Grant and Deepak Chopra and Tony Robbins. They're about as far away as you can get from construction companies and and industrial plumbing and electrical and all that stuff. So where did you actually get from there to saying, okay, I'm going to focus on traditional blue collar industries and become an expert in that space?
Yeah, so those guys gave me like the platform of like personal development. So like
Mm-hmm.
that mentality was like, okay, this is the mentality that you need to be successful. So I happened to be in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was Valentine's Day, and like I bought this property off of Facebook, and the deal was like basically you have to buy everything in the property. And I remember like I was able to do that, but then I sat down on the couch and I had a conversation with myself, and I was just basically like, look, we have to figure out where the money is, because at the end of the day, none of this running around doing random shit makes sense. So the money isn't necessarily in e-com, although there is money in e-com. The money is in the blue collar. So the people in the blue collar industry, they're around for decades. They're very skilled craftsmen. They focus on one thing. And I think that's the thing, is like growing up, I was always in like the blue collar field in terms of like what my parents did or what my brother did and things like that. So I always had that knowledge, and I always had that like hands-on experience. And there are some things that I did as a kid, like I wouldn't necessarily wish on someone, but those very same things were like things that were impactful to my career.
Okay. I think a lot of people who come into online without maybe having much prior experience, they look around and they think there's so much money in online, but like if you just think about it, like what's inside the computer is clearly less than everything in the built environment around you. Like there's so much more embedded value in the built environment that we all live in,
Yep.
and it's just maybe a little bit less visible, or the path to access it is not so clear.
Yeah, I think the path to access it isn't clear. And so when we think, I guess when we think of blue collar, right, we're thinking of like men. So first of all, like I'm a female and I'm entering a potentially intimidating environment, right? And so it could come across as that I'm uneducated or unknowledgeable or unwilling to work in the field that men work in. And
Mm-hmm.
that's true to some degree, because I'm very traditional in that sense. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a way for women to be integrated into blue collar businesses that provide value to both the business owner and the bottom line. And so figuring that way out is, I think, the key to a lot of people's success in wanting to get into blue collar businesses today.
So when you go to meetings with clients, do you still even now find that quite often you might be the only woman in the room?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I just did a site visit up in South Carolina not too long ago. And it
Mhm.
was me, my client, who is a Black female, and a German attorney who is like 85 years old or something. And then the broker who represented the seller, and the seller himself. So we like walk in, and like the seller was like, if that's the buyer, we're not selling. And then he pointed to me and he was like, that's the only person that I would sell it to. And I was like, well, yeah, you would sell it to me because I represent you. We're both German. We both have blue eyes. Like, we both are white. We are. So it really depends, because people have this concept of like what someone buying a business should be like. And so
Mhm.
even still today, like if you have an accent, or if you are a different color or a different race or a different religion, or you don't match their values and beliefs, they could be very hesitant to do these transactions. And that's especially true when women enter the blue collar realm and want to buy businesses. So you have to be very careful about how to stay in feminine energy ultimately, because men don't want to compete and they don't want to lose. And so you just have to be very aware of that in your negotiating tactics.
With people who've got skills that are they've developed online, skills at marketing, skills at promotion and sales, what can they actually bring to the table that's valuable and useful to blue collar business owners if they want to serve that space?
I think women serve best as bookkeepers, so CFOs or CPAs or accountants, They serve best as door stoppers, people who will stop all of the people who shouldn't be getting into the business, the clients that shouldn't be coming to the business, or just generalized individuals who should be away from the business. And then organizers. So women are really good at like the OCD aspect of things, or like organizing the business in a way that's sustainable and can grow. So putting stuff into CRMs, or integrating technology, or following up on SOPs, standard operational procedures, or like things that are maybe not necessarily the skill set of a man, right? So you need both, and the dynamics work really good together.
Mm-hmm. And more broadly, in the businesses you work in, where do you see gaps in those businesses that maybe even like young, not whether necessarily men or women, but younger people with primarily digital skills can actually serve those businesses and be valuable to them?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways, right? So I think a lot of blue collar businesses are lacking leads. They're perhaps lacking SEO. They're lacking web design and development. They depend on reviews. They don't have as much visibility online, and they don't care to. So a lot of the businesses that go for sale right now will say like, well, we don't market because we work on referral only, and we don't have a website, and we don't have an email list, and we don't have visibility on Google, and we don't have all these things. And they think that's so great. And it's actually not that great because it's hurting them. And so I think all of those things compacted together can help a business grow.
What I've seen from myself talking to blue collar business owners is that as soon as I tell them, hey, I used to be a cabinet maker, or hey, I used to project manage on resort development, straight away, like it just makes things easier. They feel like, okay, you're a person who's actually done a day's work in your life. But maybe some of the people I know in digital have never done anything except work on a computer. How can those people kind of cross the bridge and become acceptable to blue collar business owners when it comes to service provision?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm a great example of this because I deal with this every day. So just yesterday, actually, there was a thread where a guy referred me to a tree company that wanted to go for sale. And one of the person like underneath in the thread decided to make a commentary about how I basically ripped people off the last 18 years. And then the person that referred me was like, I probably should have told you about the tree people. And I'm like, it's a common theme. No, I don't climb trees. Yes, I have skills in other areas. So I think figuring out how to communicate with people and figuring out how to do that in a way where they respect you. You don't necessarily have to have the knowledge, and you don't necessarily have to be on the ground, hands-on in the tree with a chainsaw, right? So I think you have to figure out where can you clearly communicate the value that you can bring to a prospective client, and how you could integrate into their business where it would not only be valuable to them from a time perspective, which every business owner wants their time back, but also from a value perspective of how I'm adding money to your bottom line. And these things people will pay for day in and day out. So if you lack communication skills, you will come across as disrespectful or arrogant or stuck up or a variety of different names, and they just won't deal with you. And so if you are very firm in your stance that you bring value and that you are going to put money and time back in their hands, they'll listen. And so you just have to be confident. And if you don't have that confidence, then you're definitely not going to be able to sell them anything.
What I find in general is that, from working with construction guys over the years, is like they don't soft pedal the way they talk. They'll talk.
Oh,
They're
no.
quite brutal in the way they speak. And some people who are the younger generation, who are more used to just the online world, are very sensitive, and they get their feelings hurt too easy. Kind of have to have a thick skin to deal with these guys.
You absolutely do. I mean, so I would say like growing up in Iowa, like we had thick skin, but I was also in experiences where I didn't desire to be in. So one of those experiences, for example, like we cut wood. So my parents didn't have money to burn anything except wood. We could not afford oil. We could not afford pellets, whatever. So my dad, as the oldest child, like we would all go out with the uncles, cut the wood, stack the wood, put the wood in the truck, whatever. But like I had to go to the bathroom, and they were just like, "Here, just use some leaves and go to the bathroom in the middle of the woods." And it's like I am a girl that's a teenager out in the middle of the woods, and I'm super uncomfortable. And that's the thing, is like those experiences, that uncomfortability is the very thing that like allows me to enter this realm, because at the end of the day, like these guys are doing that. Like they're out in the middle of the woods going to the bathroom. They don't stop for breaks. They're busting their ass in 109-degree weather outside. I mean, they're doing things that normal people behind a computer has no identity, like that they're not tied to that. So there's no relation between the two of them.
Yeah, and inevitably, somebody who works hard and does physical stuff all the time is not going to naturally have as much respect for somebody who can't acquit themselves well in that sort of physical realm, right?
Yeah, I mean, they just don't respect them because they feel like they're lazy. And so there's this division of like people behind computers are lazy because they're doing white collar jobs. Meanwhile, like the blue collar guys are, you know, they're very rugged type. They are a completely different beast, and they're not the type that's going to go to the gym necessarily, because they're the playground is their gym. Like this is what they do day in and day out. And so they're not going to be less rugged to talk to you, to communicate with you. So you need to figure out how you can be more relatable.
We didn't maybe touch on this directly, but there's been a generational shift. It looks like, or appears to be a big generational shift happening, where a lot of older construction business, industrial type business owners are maybe aging out of the industry and are looking to sell their businesses. Can you just speak a little bit on that and what opportunities it presents for younger people?
Yeah, so 1.2 million businesses come to market per day. Of those, probably 60% or more are owned by the generation that is retiring, or that is their reason for getting out of the business. And so a lot of, like, let me just use an example of a company that I'm dealing with today. So I'm doing an evaluation today for a company that has been in business for the last 50 years. The owners are 83 years old. Mom and dad both work in the business. The daughter and the son-in-law would like to buy the business. Now, it just so happens like they don't have contracts, but they have relationships with all these people that they've built up and sustained and have passed down to their other generation that has come up as a child into an adult as a career field in this business. And so we have to determine, like, what is this value worth? And it's worth something different than just taking your normal business and evaluating it and putting a multiple on it. And so if we look at these businesses that are coming up today, we can see like these businesses were World War II, World War I businesses. They were businesses that were done for the provision of family, so that the mom could stay home and raise the kids, and so that the dad could be in the field making whatever the family needed to be provided inside of the home. Whereas today, like the generation that's buying is buying based on a lifestyle and based on a freedom. And so the businesses that they're buying don't have that lifestyle and freedom that they're trying to attain. So they have to look at it from a cash flow perspective. Does this cash flow make sense for the places that I want to travel, the family that I want to raise, the place, like the house that I want to live in, the car that I want to drive? And so while that generation was worried about how can I give my son this business, this generation isn't worried about that. They're like, 50% of marriages get divorced. Like, I don't plan on giving my kid anything. Figure it out for yourself. And so we're looking at two completely different dichotomies. One is a very like solid structure that has no sellability, or if it does have sellability, it's not as like as tight as it should be, because no one taught them the value of building a business so that it's actually worth something at an exit, versus this generation that we have that's buying these businesses are buying on the, can I get this business for super cheap, zero money down, and seller finance the whole thing, because that's what I was told I could do.
How do the business owners you work with feel when they get these offers, like, will you sell or finance it, and we won't give you much cash, and we'll pay you off someday eventually out of the profits? How do they feel about those kinds of offers?
It depends on the situation. So
Mhm.
I've got a client right now who's buying a business where the person was like, I'm just going to shut down the doors of the business. And it just so happened this particular owner had a friend that went to church and they met, and those two people like crossed paths at exactly the right time because my client wants to buy this business and is going to give a little less than 6 million to buy this business. Now, had they just shut the doors, there would be nothing, right? So now this person has the opportunity to have a very substantial um, a pile of cash, I guess you call it, to go into retirement at 83 years old, um, and live life. But at the end of the day, like, what kind of freedom is that? So you have to like really recognize people's emotions are extremely high when it comes to buying and selling. And so if you can remove the emotional component out of it, it becomes a lot easier of a conversation. And so I try to mitigate the conversations between buyers and sellers as much as possible so that the emotions aren't running at an all-time high and people aren't thinking they're going to get one thing and then they get something else. So I'll straight up ask my seller, like, are you expecting seller financing? Are you willing to do that? And then if the buyer says like, I want them to hold the bag for 20% or 40%, I'll say like, that's not an option because we've already pre-discussed what they were willing to do. And that's not the terms that we're willing to offer. And so that removes this extra layer of complexity.
For somebody like me who does things like lead generation or helps business on the marketing side, what are the ways beyond actually just giving them the leads that I can bring value to a client who's in a blue collar industry?
Good question, because I don't work in marketing. So this is probably where I'm going to get stuck a little bit, but I'm going to try my best to answer this question for you. So I think
Mhm.
that it's not necessarily the leads that they want, although they do want that. I
Yes.
think it's how can we get visibility, get traction, get referrals, integrate technology in whatever capacity. So let's take any blue collar business. Those businesses will say like, I have X amount of reviews on Google, or whatever website, and they think that's worth something, but that's only worth something if someone is following up. So as a marketer, I would say like, I will go back to all your Google reviews and integrate a referral system, and I will call all these people and or have an email campaign go to all these people and or text message campaign so that we can further this 5-star review into another paying customer or into another project worth X amount of more money to the bottom line. So figuring out ways to connect the already existing dots that the owner has in place to build on, um, and put more money and more time in their life. And I always fall back on that because at the end of the day, like, a lot of these businesses don't use the resources that they already have in front of them to get more resources that will put more money in their pocket and more time on their calendar.
Where else do you see like technology gaps? And I'm not talking about like big on large scale, but just like everyday technology that these types of businesses generally tend not to use well and could use much better.
So the follow-up system, basically when a customer comes in the door, like, that's a hot lead. And so if that's a hot lead, you need to be taking care of that lead almost immediately. So you'll see that anytime someone like reaches out to me via Facebook message or via email or in whatever capacity, I'll respond within a 2 to 3 minute window. And
Yeah.
that's a very quick, that's not the precedent. Like, that's not, I don't do that during the weekend and stuff like that, but I'm very, very quick to reply because at the end of the day, that's a hot lead. And so I think that a lot of business owners say, like, plumbing companies, for example, they have people call in and then they forget to put a credit card on file, or they forget to take a deposit, or they forget to, put a system in place where the person calling in can immediately get their call responded to because it's quote unquote an emergency, whether it is or isn't. There should be time built in and systems integrated so that the customer gets served from the beginning because they're a warm lead. So they're going to pay, and they're going to pay extra if it's a Sunday, or if they can get a response right away, or if they can get their problem solved and go on with their day. And so I think it all comes down to intake. Like how responsive are you being to clientele, and how much follow-up are you giving them? And then are your books clean? So your accounts receivable, are you calling and saying like, you guys owe us X amount of dollars, we need to collect on that? And like just having a very flawless, seamless system that allows a customer's experience to seem like, like 5 stars. So if people are calling you, pick up the phone. If people are emailing you, have somebody answer the emails. If people are texting in or making comments on your Facebook page, make sure that you're responsive. Responsiveness goes such a long way in today's environment.
Yeah, people are so impatient now. It's the number one pre-framing conversation I have with all new clients now. You've got to pick up that phone and call them in 5 minutes, or they're going to just go and spend their money with somebody else.
100%.
They almost don't believe you, but that's what happens.
The thing is, they've already made their decision, right? So Google's a great location to go, like I did this, right? So I go like, what's the nearest hair salon near me? And then I find the nearest hair salon near me that has 5-star reviews, that seems like everything is legit and good. And then I immediately go to that hair salon. It's the same with tree service. It's the same with, HVAC companies. It's the same with flooring companies. Like, I'm doing a huge remodel in my house right now. I'm looking for companies that are A, responsive, B, responsible, C, will be held accountable, and D, will make sure that the follow-up is always in communication. It's not lacking. So, you're not only showing up, but you're also showing interest that you care about me as a client.
Cool. So, hey, just to recap on that, because you've given me ideas there of things that I can actually offer clients a bit more, which is helping them to communicate more with the customer, which is something a lot of times they don't like to do because they feel like doing the job is their job, and I'll tell you when it's done. I know that's really a classic thing with construction guys. The follow-up fast is a thing. The following up more often is also important, and giving a little bit more education to the potential customer. And collections, I forgot about that. That's such a huge one. It's one that's traditionally usually delegated to somebody who is not often well suited to the collections role, has to do that job in construction companies.
Yeah, well, they suit it to the person that's paid the least. And that's such a bad idea.
Yes.
Like, you need somebody skilled in the art of negotiation, and skilled in the art of follow-up, and skilled in the art of just breaking the barrier on, like, look, you owe me money. You need to pay your money. Like, because at the end of the day, you got the service. This is a business. It's the same with when companies should ask for credit card deposits when sending, so like I had a huge water main break here last summer, and my main water main was going, like, it was pouring 200 gallons of water in the streets per hour for 10 straight days, and nobody called me because I was out of the country doing whatever. And so, like, when the plumbing company called me, they shut off the main water line. And then they also said, like, okay, we have one of two options here. Here's the two options. This option is going to cost this. This option is going to cost that. Can we put a credit card on file because we have a surcharge of $295 or whatever? So I think that if you're going to send somebody to a site, make sure that you set the precedent as, I am taking a deposit because my time is valuable and my skills are also valuable. And so if you're not taking that deposit, it looks like you're just willing to put in all this extra work and make all these extra, like, documents for nothing. And this is something I learned the hard way, is like, people would ask me, like, can I get a proposal? And I'd be like, no, you can't get a proposal. Because at the end of the day, like, I can't be sitting here making proposals and you not buying. You're either ready to buy or you're not ready to buy. And that's not me being an asshole. This is a business. And I'm in business to make money. And I hope that you are too. So if you are, I respect that. And I will give you my credit card number, and I will put down a deposit, and I will make sure that that credit card has money the next time you're scheduled to make a payment. Like, it's just the cycle of business.
Awesome. I love it. I think I got all my questions answered.
Cool. Awesome.
Before we wrap, I would like just maybe you to tell a little bit about, for somebody who's watching who owns a blue collar business, tell them about what things they should reach out to you about to get help with, and how can they do that?
I mean, the easiest way is to text me. So 763-482-2681. I'm in the United States, so that's a +1 763-482-2681. BlueCollarBusinessAdvisors.com has resources on there for buying, selling, and scaling blue collar businesses. They're totally free. You don't have to opt in. You can download them and utilize them as a resource. And then obviously I am on Facebook only. So if you want to reach out in that capacity, you can. Otherwise, mk@bluecollarbusinessadvisors.com.
Cool. You mentioned buying, selling, and the scaling. The scaling
Yep.
is the kind of one interesting one. I want to just dig in on that. What kinds of symptoms might they notice where they think there's something not quite right here, and that you'd be the person to come in and fix that problem?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things. Okay, so I am dealing with a construction company that deals in apartment complexes only up in Atlanta, and they're a restoration company. And so, like, one of the things that they noticed is that they are very generous to everybody. So they're generous in the capacity that they ask people, how much do you want to make? And they make sure you not only make that, but you get benefits. You get a company car, you get a company gas card, you get all kinds of things. And they're so nice that they don't actually go back and say, like, hey, you don't actually deserve all of these things. And so I'm the one stepping in and being the bad guy. And it's okay. I don't mind it. But at the end of the day, like, people have to understand, like, you have a job and your job is to do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to be held accountable for doing X, Y, and Z. So if your job is to make the company money, then you're not going to get paid more than you make the company. So, like, I think people need to assess, what are you actually paying people in comparison to what they're putting on the bottom line? And that's a big one, because a lot of people are overpaying people and they're not bringing any money to the actual bottom line. So in sales, in customer service, in support, in just the delivery. So if you're out doing an HVAC job, you can upsell, HVAC services. It's the same with electrical. Like, you can upsell that. Like, there's just a lot of ways that your people should be able to put money on the bottom line, and you can teach them how to do that. And so if you just are taking an intake form in and saying, like, my customer needs X serviced, and your service guy gets there and the tech does his work and leaves without saying a word about any of the other services, then he's doing you as a business a disservice. And you need to recognize that, and you need to course correct that. And the way to course correct that is to make sure that they have the education, they have the relationship with you, and or they have the training necessary that you've invested in. And if that's a problem, then you have a cash flow issue, and that comes back to your sales guys. So you need to, like, look at every single piece of your business, and if it's not adding money to the bottom line in some capacity, and your people aren't held accountable or responsible for putting money on your bottom line in some capacity, again, you're doing your business a disservice.
Yeah, amazing. It's such a great point that customer service people and point of service fulfillment people can be some of the most effective salespeople if they're just trained to help in that.
Yes, but you as a business owner have to be willing and able to be in the field and teach these guys or spend extra time educating these guys, and B, and if you cannot do that in that capacity, then you need to invest in and be willing to put money up for additional training and or resources, tools, knowledge, and classes, so that they can get certified and or have an extra day of training or whatever they need to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And by successful, I mean bring money to your bottom line.
Yes. And this is the thing I've seen with a lot of business owners too. They're almost afraid to chastise their employees or to ask more of them. And that's where having someone who's an external person who doesn't have to tread that emotional relationship, like you can come in and just tell it like it is.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that you should have standard operational protocols that allow you to see what each person in the field is doing on a day-to-day basis, and then integrate that into a capacity where it relates to money. Now, I'm not saying, like, money is everything, but it is the most important thing. And so if you don't have these SOPs and your guys are going out in the field and they have no way to tell you what went on throughout the day, or if somebody had an issue and it may be blown out of proportion, and you're going to get a 2-star review instead of a 5-star review, then you have no business trying to educate your customer if you yourself don't even know what's wrong inside of your own business. And so it's really important to just have a third party evaluate the business or look at the business or see all of the moving parts of the business and tell you how to make it operationally much more fit and profitable and also scalable and sellable.
Awesome. Melissa, thank you very much.
You're very
Really
welcome.
enjoyed the conversation, and I'm grateful for you taking the time to come and talk today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I'm going to stop the stream.
Sure.